Little girl cleaned an office until a millionaire CEO noticed her and learned why. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you believe in quiet moments that change everything in the kind of family that finds you when the world forgets you, this one is for you. The elevator hummed as it rose toward the 50th floor of the Langford Crown Hotel, a glass and marble monolith Elias Quinn had spent 15 years turning into the city's most opulent symbol of control. It was well past 11 at night. The hotel's penthouse offices were supposed to be deserted by now. Most executives had gone home. The lights across the top floor had already dimmed. Only the security motion sensors blinked in red. Elias had returned not out of necessity but from habit. The gala dinner at the Langford Ballroom had ended in its usual blur of praise photographs and forced smiles. He had shaken hands posed beside the mayor, made polite conversation with old investors who still remembered his first struggling hotel on the waterfront. But beneath the tailored tuxedo and measured charm, his thoughts were already back here. The quiet, the view, the only place that didn't ask for anything. He stepped out of the elevator and into the hushed corridor. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected his figure back at him, tall and sharp in the muted gold of the emergency lights. He moved past the offices of his executive team, pausing only briefly at the frosted glass door that bore his name. Elias Quinn, founder and CEO. There were no janitors on this floor at this hour. Housekeeping came before dusk. Security made rounds. After 10, it was supposed to be silence. He tapped in the door code and pushed open the heavy door. The office greeted him with its usual cold, elegant, sleek furniture, an untouched bar cart, a perfectly aligned set of silver pens. But something was off. He felt it before he saw it. A whisper of movement near his desk, a shape too small, too wrong. Then he heard it, the soft, deliberate clicking of keyboard keys. He stepped further inside and froze. A little girl sat behind his desk. She couldn't have been older than 6, maybe 7 if that. Her legs dangled well above the floor. Her small hands hovered over his keyboard. She wore a faded red hoodie with sleeves too long and cuffs stained at the edges. Her hair, dark and unevenly cut, was tied into a lopsided ponytail. She had on yellow cleaning gloves, comically oversized, and her back was straight with a kind of focus Elias recognized, not childish play, but mimicry. Serious mimicry. "What are you doing?" He said the words, leaving him before he could decide on tone. The girl jumped, slightly startled, but not afraid. She looked at him with wide brown eyes, eyes that did not belong to a girl playing dress-up. They were too quiet, too resigned. "I'm sorry," she said softly, pulling her hands off the keyboard. "I wasn't going to break anything." He took a slow step forward. "This is my office. You're not supposed to be here." She nodded. "I know." "Who are you?" he asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Isla." "Where's your mother?" She shook her head. "I don't have one here." "Then who brought you?" There was a pause. "Mira. She said I could clean in this part if I stayed quiet." Elias's eyes narrowed. Mira Dalton, one of the overnight janitors, 40-something, quiet, efficient, on payroll for 3 years. He had never spoken to her beyond a nod in the hall. "You're not on the staff," he said. "You're a child." Isla dropped her eyes to the floor. "I help. That's what Mira says. I help and I don't make noise. Then I can stay." He moved closer. She didn't flinch, but she did slide off the chair, landing lightly on the balls of her feet. The gloves slipped a little further down her arms as she reached for a sponge and a small red bucket beside the desk. "I'll finish and go now." "No," Elias said sharply, then softened his voice. "Put that down." She did. But her expression remained unreadable. Not scared, not defiant, just tired. "How long have you been here? I don't know," she said. He crouched slightly, trying to level his eyes with hers. "Where do you sleep downstairs?" "Near the old laundry room." His jaw tightened. That section had been closed during renovations over a year ago. No one should have access. "Does Mira know?" Isla nodded. "She says as long as I don't break anything and help her when it's busy, it's okay." "This is not okay," he muttered. Elias stood up and pulled his phone from his pocket. He dialed the head of night security. "Get Mira Dalton up to the penthouse office. Now." There was a long pause on the other end. "Yes, sir." Elias ended the call and looked back at Isla. She had resumed standing beside her bucket. Her posture was still, and her gaze focused on a spot near the window. "I didn't take anything," she said. "I know. I just like this room. It's warm and quiet." He hesitated. Something about the way she said it, the simplicity of it, the way warmth was a luxury, and silence was a treasure pressed into a place in him he hadn't visited in years. "I'm not sending you back downstairs," he said. Her eyes flickered toward him, but she said nothing. "You'll come with me." She gave a slow nod. Not excitement, not confusion, just agreement, as if this were just the next unexpected turn she had already braced herself for. Security arrived with Mira 10 minutes later. The woman's face was pale, her hands trembling. "I didn't mean any harm," she said immediately. "She was just there one night, sitting in the laundry corridor. I couldn't bring her to a shelter. She begged. I let her stay in the storage room. She doesn't eat much. She just helps sometimes." "You know this violates every policy we have," Elias said, his voice like ice. "You've kept an unregistered child in a commercial property. You've exposed us to legal and moral risk." "I know. She was so small. And no one was looking for her." Elias dismissed her. "Leave your badge and go home. Someone will contact you in the morning." Mira looked at Isla with a tight expression. "I'm sorry, honey." Isla didn't respond. She looked down at her shoes. After the doors shut, Elias glanced at the child. "Do you want to go back with her?" Isla shook her head. "Good," he said. "Let's go." They descended in the private elevator, the silence stretching long and thick between them. Elias's penthouse suite was high above the hotel's east wing, a modern expanse of glass and dark wood perched like a fortress above the city. He keyed open the door and led her inside. She did not gape at the space or run to touch things. She walked in carefully, her sneakers squeaking slightly against the marble. He guided her to the guest bedroom. It was crisp, unused, decorated in white and navy. "This will be your room for tonight," he said. She nodded and walked in. Elias watched her take in the space quietly, methodically. She placed her red hoodie on the edge of the bed and turned to him. "Thank you," she said. He blinked. "You're welcome." She sat on the bed and folded her hands. After a beat, he closed the door gently. In the kitchen, Elias poured a glass of scotch. The city lights winked at him through the floor-to-ceiling windows, indifferent to the fact that a child now slept down the hall. He sipped and exhaled. Something had shifted. He could feel it. A door opened inside him that he had welded shut long ago. It did not ask for answers. It only asked that he stay. The next morning, Elias woke earlier than usual. He padded to the kitchen in his usual black t-shirt and drawstring pants. He was pouring coffee when he heard soft steps. Isla stood in the doorway. She wore the same clothes as last night. Her face was freshly washed and her hair had been awkwardly combed. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied. "Are you hungry?" She nodded. He opened the fridge, hesitated, then began cracking eggs into a pan. He did not cook often, but he knew how to scramble eggs. She watched him quietly, arms wrapped around herself. He slid the eggs onto a plate and placed it in front of her. She ate slowly, neatly, every bite. After she finished, she placed the fork down gently. "Thank you." He nodded. "We'll get you some clean clothes today." "Okay." He studied her for a moment. "Do you always say thank you?" She paused. "Only when I mean it." Later that morning, Elias called his lawyer. "I need information on emergency guardianship laws," he said. "Are you serious?" came the response. "I've never been more serious." He glanced toward the hallway, and for the first time in a very long time, Elias Quinn wasn't thinking about the empire he built. He was thinking about the little girl in the guest room, the one who typed on his keyboard like it was a shield, the one who reminded him of something he had once wanted but never dared to reach for: family, a home, something real, something that mattered. The morning air in Elias Quinn's penthouse was unusually still. Even the city beyond the glass walls seemed quieter than usual, as if the presence of the girl down the hall had shifted something invisible in the atmosphere. Elias stood barefoot in his kitchen coffee in hand, staring through the window. Below, the Langford Crown Hotel's staff began their daily ballet of movements, uniforms pressed, steps swift, carts filled with polished silver and crisp linen. Everything ran like clockwork. Yet inside this penthouse the gears had started turning differently. Behind him, a faint sound of footsteps approached. Light, careful. He did not turn until he heard the soft thud of a stool being dragged across the tiled floor. Isla climbed onto the seat and sat at the breakfast counter. She wore the same red hoodie from the night before, but her sleeves were rolled up now, and her hair had been combed back into a small knot at the base of her neck. It was uneven, but neat. She looked at the plate in front of her, which Elias had placed earlier, out of habit. Peanut butter toast, smooth, not crunchy. "Thank you," she said. Elias nodded. "I remembered." She took a bite, chewed quietly, then said, "There are 7 elevators in this building, but only one goes to the top without stopping." He paused. "You counted?" I watched. From the vent near the mailroom. The red light blinks differently on that one. He looked at her. She wasn't bragging. She was stating a fact. This child had studied the building like it was her only map through the world. "You know this place better than most of my staff," he said. "I had to. You can't get lost if you know all the doors." There was something about the way she said it. Calm, methodical, like she had learned that truth early and never let it go. After breakfast, Elias cleared the plates while Isla disappeared into the guest room. When he passed by the open door, he saw her standing at the window, her notebook pressed against the glass. She was sketching again, thin pencil lines forming outlines of something. Hallways, arrows, labels. "What are you drawing?" he asked. She held up the page without turning. It was the service floor beneath the ballroom. "Is this from memory?" "Yes. You know this by heart." She nodded. "There's a place behind the old laundry wall where the pipes hum. It's warm there." Elias crossed his arms. "Is that where you slept sometimes?" "When Mira was on the top floors. I don't like the linen chute. It smells like old lemons and metal." "How long were you down there? I don't know." "Weeks." She shrugged. "I think longer." He exhaled slowly. The image of her crouched in a dark corner behind rusted walls made something heavy settle in his chest. "No child should ever sleep near a boiler," he muttered. Isla looked at him then. "I didn't mind the noise. It's the quiet places that feel dangerous." Elias froze at that. He had spent most of his adult life chasing silence. Now he was learning it could mean something very different to someone else. "I need to get you some clothes," he said, changing the subject gently. "I have assistants who can—" "No," she said quickly. "Please. I don't want other people." He hesitated. "All right, then we'll go together." An hour later, Elias's sleek black car pulled up to the private entrance of a boutique children's store on Madison Street. The manager, summoned by a quiet phone call, had opened early for them. Elias rarely set foot in public spaces without preparation. Today was no different. But Isla seemed overwhelmed nonetheless. She clung to his coat sleeve as they walked, and her eyes darting to the shelves lined with neatly folded dresses and soft wool sweaters. The manager smiled too brightly. "Welcome, Mr. Quinn. And this must be her name is Isla Elias," said curtly. "We'll need the basics. And something warm. She doesn't have a coat." "Of course. Right this way." Isla let go of his sleeve and walked slowly down the aisle. Her fingers brushed the edge of a lavender scarf, then a set of mittens shaped like small foxes. But she picked up nothing. She kept walking. "Do you want to choose something?" Elias asked. "I don't know what to pick. Whatever you like." She turned to him. "Will I have to leave it behind?" "No," he said. "Nothing you choose here gets taken away." She stared at him for a long moment, then reached for a navy blue cardigan with 3 wooden buttons. "This one feels soft." He nodded. "Good choice." She added a gray dress, 2 pairs of leggings, and a pair of dark sneakers. When they reached the counter, Elias paid, without blinking. Isla stood beside him, quiet and still holding the paper bag like it was made of glass. On the way back to the car, she whispered, "Thank you. You already said that this morning. This time I mean it more." Back at the penthouse, Elias stepped into his office while Isla unpacked her things in the guest room. He made 2 calls, one to his attorney, the other to his security chief. "I need background information on a woman named Mira Dalton," he said. "Janitorial staff. She's been with us for 3 years. Is there an issue? No? Just find everything you can. And also check the maintenance logs. Past 3 months. Look for any temporary hires who disappeared without notice." "Yes, Mr. Quinn." He hung up and opened his laptop. A folder sat on the desktop. Untouched since last night, it held scans of old photos from his early years, ones he had nearly thrown out a dozen times. He opened one. 2 boys standing on the steps of a group home, one with his arms folded defiant, the other with a crooked smile and a scraped knee. Liam, his younger brother, gone before they turned 10. The system had pulled them apart. Different placements. Lost contact. Elias had looked for him once briefly after college, but there had been no trail, only silence. Now Isla's story lingered in his mind. The man who looked like him, who gave her chocolate and told her to stay in the quiet corners. Could it have been him? Could Liam have been here walking the halls of Elias's own empire and vanished again before he knew? He shook his head. It seemed impossible. But then again, so did finding a 6-year-old under his desk at midnight. That afternoon, Elias returned to the living room to find Isla seated on the floor, legs crossed, sorting her new clothes into tidy stacks. She had folded them precisely corner to corner. Her notebook was open beside her. "Did you label the stacks?" he asked, amused. "Yes. Warm, sleep, outside, inside, one dressy, but only one. Why only one? Just in case I need it. Not for now. You think ahead. I have to." She looked up at him then. "Do you think I can stay here forever?" The question stopped him cold. She said it so plainly. No trembling lip, no tears. Just quiet hope braced against disappointment. He walked over and sat on the edge of the couch. "I don't know how long forever is, Isla, but I know you can stay here as long as I can keep you safe." She nodded. "Okay. Is that enough for now?" "Yes. Because you don't lie." "How do you know that?" "Because you listen first." That night after dinner, Isla pulled out the fairy tale book Elias had bought her at the bookstore next to the clothing shop. She sat beside him on the couch, her head resting gently against his arm as he read aloud. His voice, once trained for boardrooms and press conferences, softened with every page. She didn't fall asleep, but she stopped tracing the illustrations with her fingers and just listened. When he closed the book, she said, "You read like you mean it." "I do. My aunt read stories like they were chores. This isn't a chore. That's why I'm glad I'm here." Elias leaned back, unsure what to say. He had built 5-star rooms for presidents and foreign royalty. But it was this moment, this small, warm weight against his shoulder, that felt like the first real measure of home. And in that stillness, he began to wonder what kind of man he had been all these years, and what kind of man he might still become. Because now, for the first time, someone was watching. Someone small, someone brave, someone who trusted him enough to stay. We'll return in just a moment. If you're still here, please consider subscribing. It's how we're able to keep doing this. Back to the story now. The rain had begun falling sometime in the night, a steady, rhythmic tapping against the vast glass windows of the penthouse that made the silence feel deeper, more thoughtful. Elias Quinn stood in his office, coffee cooling on the edge of his desk, staring at a set of security logs displayed on his screen. The names flicked past in orderly rows, uniform timestamps and shift durations. Nothing stood out. He scrolled backward through dates, through names, searching for one that should not be there, or perhaps one that should have been. A quiet knock pulled him from the search. He looked up and saw Isla in the doorway. She was barefoot again, wearing the soft navy cardigan they had picked out 2 days earlier. Her hands folded in front of her like she had done something wrong but wasn't sure if she should confess it. "Good morning," Elias said. "Morning," she answered. "Did you eat?" She nodded. I made toast. You were working. You know how to use the toaster. I watched you. She stepped further into the room and looked at the screen. Are those names? Yes, he said. People who used to work here. I'm trying to find someone. Lee. The way she said it soft but certain made him pause. Yes, he said. I think he might be someone I used to know a long time ago. Isla's fingers touched the edge of the desk. He said he didn't belong anywhere, that he only stayed in places that forgot to notice him. Elias nodded slowly. That sounds like something he'd say. Are you going to find him? I'm trying. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, Will he be mad if you do? Elias looked at her surprised. Why would he be mad? Because sometimes people disappear on purpose. He did not answer right away. Instead, he reached into the top drawer and pulled out the old photograph of him and Liam. He turned it toward her. Is this the man you saw? She studied the photo for a long time, tracing the edges with her eyes. Then she pointed. That's you. Yes. And that's him. That was a long time ago, Elias said. He's older now, but you still think it looks like the same person. She nodded. Same eyes, same voice. Elias felt a strange ache stir in his chest. Thank you, he said, for remembering. You don't forget someone who talks kindly to you, she said. She turned and left the room without another word, leaving Elias with the photo still in his hands and a heart heavier than it had been a moment ago. That afternoon, while Isla worked on her drawings in the living room, Elias took the elevator to the service floors. He moved with a purpose, his polished shoes clicking sharply against concrete floors that had never been part of the guest experience. The old laundry hall smelled faintly of mildew and detergent, a scent that clung to the walls like a ghost. He followed Isla's map, the one she had drawn in her notebook, to the exact corner where she claimed she used to sleep. There, behind a loose panel, he found a hidden space barely wide enough for a child to curl up in. A folded blanket, an old candy wrapper, a half-used pencil, and scratched faintly into the drywall above the ledge a name. Lee. Elias stood there for a long time. The space was silent, empty now, but it felt full of presence. Someone had been here. Someone had taken care to make this small, cold corner a place of safety. As he stepped back, he noticed something else. Tucked behind a pipe nearly out of sight was a small plastic badge, the kind used for temporary access. The photo had long faded, but the name printed on it was still legible. Liam Carr. The alias meant nothing to most people, but Elias knew it immediately. Their mother's maiden name had been Carr. Liam must have used it to avoid detection, to stay invisible. Elias returned to the penthouse with the badge in his pocket. He did not show Isla, not yet. Instead, he went to his office and called his lawyer. I need you to prepare the paperwork for emergency guardianship, he said. Effective immediately. Elias, the voice replied, cautious. Are you sure? Yes. You understand what this will involve? Interviews, background checks, a home visit. It won't be private. I don't care, Elias said. She can't go back. Not after what I've seen. We'll start today, the lawyer said. I'll send over the initial forms. Elias hung up and stared at the skyline. The rain had stopped. The clouds lingered, but the city was beginning to glow again under the shifting light. Behind him, Isla's voice rang out softly. Can I show you something? He turned. She held up a page from her notebook. It was a floor plan, but this one was different. It was not of the hotel. It was of the penthouse, labeled rooms, doors, windows, and in one corner a tiny stick figure drawn inside the guest room, another taller figure standing in the hall. Is that me? He asked. She nodded. That's you on the night I arrived. He studied the drawing. And you, that's me. Watching the door. Why, to see if you'd come back. He said nothing. The truth of it hit deeper than he expected. Do you still feel like you have to watch the door? No, she said. Not now. Good. He kneeled beside her. Because you're not leaving. She looked at him, eyes wide. Really, I filed the papers. You'll stay here, with me. Her lips parted, then closed again. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply nodded and whispered, "Okay." That night, she left her notebook open on the kitchen table. Elias saw it after she went to bed. The page showed the same drawing again, but now the stick figure of him was sitting beside hers. No hallway between them. No door. Just two people inside the same room. Together. The next day passed quietly. Elias worked from home, stepping out of meetings, only to check in on Isla, who spent most of the morning reorganizing the bookshelf in the guest room. She placed her books in perfect lines, grouping them by size and color. When Elias brought her a new book that afternoon, she received it with a quiet, careful touch. "This one will go in the middle," she said, "so it doesn't feel alone." He watched her place it precisely between two others. "You like things to be even. It's easier to trust what's balanced." That evening, as the city turned gold and violet again, Elias received a call from his head of security. "We traced the badge," the man said. "Liam Carr, temporary maintenance hire, joined 3 months ago. Left with no notice. But we have camera footage from his last shift. He was on the 22nd floor, alone, talking to a child." Elias's breath caught. "Can you send me the footage? Already done." When Elias opened the file on his computer, his heart lurched. The grainy image showed a man in worn clothes crouching beside a small girl with a red hoodie. Isla. He handed her a wrapped piece of candy. She smiled faintly. Then he touched her shoulder, gently said something the camera did not capture, and stood. He walked down the hallway, then vanished around a corner. Elias paused the frame. The man had aged, but the face was unmistakable. Liam. Alive. Elias sat back in his chair, the weight of it all sinking in. His brother had been here, in his hotel, speaking to the same girl who now slept down the hall. A brother he had lost, a girl he had found, and somehow they were connected. That night Elias stood at Isla's door. She was reading again, the fairy tale book open on her lap. "Isla," he said softly, "do you remember what Lee said to you? The last time you saw him, she looked up. He said he was going to leave before anyone noticed he belonged." Elias nodded slowly. "That sounds like him." "You'll find him," she said. "I think he wants to be found, just not loudly." Elias didn't know what to say to that, so he simply nodded. "Sleep well," he said. "You too." When he turned off the lights that night, the silence no longer felt like a wall. It felt like space. Space waiting to be filled. With answers. With presence. With something real. Something like family. The sun was already slipping behind the skyline when the knock came. It was soft, almost polite, but carried a weight Elias Quinn immediately recognized. He had been standing in the kitchen drying a coffee cup that he had not used, thinking about Liam and all the years between then and now. He set the cup down and walked to the door, expecting a staff member or perhaps a delivery he had forgotten he ordered. Instead, a woman stood in the hallway. She wore a dark coat and held a clipboard tucked against her side like a shield. Her face was unreadable, her hair tied neatly back, her posture that of someone who was used to being let in without resistance. "Mr. Quinn," she asked. "Yes. My name is Meredith Clark. I am with the Department of Family Services. I believe you were notified we would be visiting this week regarding a report concerning a minor named Isla." Elias's jaw tightened slightly, but he stepped aside and let her in. "You are earlier than expected. We have discretion on timing. I hope that will not be an issue." She moved into the penthouse, her eyes scanning the space with quiet assessment. She did not comment on the furniture or the sweeping view. She did not comment on anything. "Where is the child?" "She is in her room." "I would like to speak with her directly," the woman said. "I assume you have no objection." Elias hesitated for only a moment, then called down the hall. "Isla, could you come here for a moment?" A few seconds passed before small footsteps echoed from the hallway. Isla appeared in the entrance of the living room, her sleeves pulled over her hands, her notebook clutched to her chest. "Isla," Elias said gently, "this is Miss Clark. She wants to talk to you. Is that all right?" Isla looked at the woman, then at Elias. She gave a single nod. Miss Clark crouched to her level. "Hello, Isla. I would like to ask you a few questions, just you and me, if that is all right." Isla looked at Elias again, her grip on the notebook tightening. "You can talk to her," Elias said. "You do not have to answer anything that makes you uncomfortable." Isla nodded. "Can we sit by the window?" "Of course," Miss Clark said. They moved to the window seat, and Elias stepped into the kitchen far enough to give space, but close enough to hear fragments. "Do you feel safe here?" "Yes." "Did someone hurt you before you came here?" A pause. "I don't want to go back there. Can you tell me why they said I had to be small?" "Small people don't cause trouble." "Who said that?" "My aunt. But she wasn't really my aunt. Do you know where your parents are?" Another pause. "No." "Do you want to stay here with Mr. Quinn?" Isla's voice was barely a whisper, but Elias heard it as clearly as if she had shouted. "He talks like I matter. I want to stay where that happens." After another few minutes, the woman stood and walked back toward Elias. "She is composed," she said. "Too composed for her age." "That's not a compliment. Children that young should not sound like they're managing a press conference. She's been through more than most adults." "I see that." She tucked the clipboard under her arm again. "The paperwork is under review. Your lawyer submitted a request for emergency guardianship. We will need to inspect the residence, formally run background checks, and interview your staff." "Do what you have to do," Elias said. "But she's staying here." Miss Clark studied him. "You are not married. You live alone. You have no history with children and no prior experience as a guardian. That does not work in your favor. Then let my actions speak for me." "We will see," she said, then gave a short nod and left. Elias exhaled slowly after the door closed. Isla stood by the window watching the city. He walked over and sat beside her. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded. She asked if I was afraid. I told her I used to be, but not now. He looked at her. "Why not now?" "Because you don't talk loud, even when you're mad." He reached out and gently touched her hair. "You don't have to be small here, Isla." She looked up at him. "Even if I break something, even then." That night, Elias sat in his office long after Isla had gone to bed. The lights were dim, the city buzzing below the buzz of thoughts in his mind, louder than anything outside. He had once believed that silence was power. Now he was learning that silence could also be a burden carried by children who had been taught never to cry too loud or ask for too much. He opened the folder containing the legal documents his lawyer had sent over. Everything looked official, formal, cold. He closed the folder and pulled out a blank page. At the top, he wrote Isla's name, and then, without overthinking, he began to write. He wrote about how he found her, about the gloves too big for her hands, about the way she had cleaned the floor like she was scrubbing away her own presence. He wrote about the maps, about the toast with peanut butter, about the cardigan with the wooden buttons. And he wrote about Liam, about the possibility that his brother had walked these halls and spoken to this girl, about the guilt and the ache and the hope that maybe he had not failed completely. He finished the page and folded it gently. It was not for the court. It was not for his lawyer. It was for her, a record of the moment he chose not to look away. The next morning he found her at the kitchen table drawing again. "What are you making today?" he asked. "A new floor plan," she said. "Of here, of everywhere I've been. I want to see it all on one page." He sat beside her. "That's a big job. I want to remember, so I don't forget where I came from. What if you didn't have to remember the bad parts? Even bad parts belong to me," she said. "They're still mine." He stared at her, this tiny person who had learned to carry so much weight. "Would you like to come with me today?" he asked. She looked up. "Where to the park? Maybe a bookstore, just something normal." She smiled, the smallest lift of her lips. "Okay." The day passed with sunlight and soft moments. She picked out another book. He watched her climb the jungle gym with hesitation, then boldness. She laughed once. It startled him. That evening, as the sky turned amber, Elias received a call from his attorney. "The hearing is set," she said. "Next Friday. You will need to prepare a statement." "I already have," Elias said. "I've been preparing for this since the night I found her." After he hung up, he found Isla on the balcony watching the stars blink into place. She turned to him and asked, "If they say no, will I disappear again?" "No," Elias said, walking toward her. "Even if they say no, we fight. Together." She leaned against him, her head resting against his side. "Then I am not afraid." In the stillness of that night, under a sky that finally seemed to make room for both of them, Elias Quinn understood something he had never known with certainty before. That some people come into your life not to be saved, but to save you. That silence is not always empty, and that the most important promises are the ones made without being asked. He had made one the moment he knelt beside her and said, "You're not going back," and he would keep it, no matter what. Just a quick moment. We're only able to keep going because of your support. If you believe in stories like this, please subscribe. Back to it now. The days leading up to the hearing moved with an almost unbearable stillness, like the air just before a storm that had not yet chosen where to strike. In the penthouse high above the city, Elias Quinn found himself becoming someone he barely recognized. He cooked eggs every morning and stopped placing business calls after 7 in the evening. He had started letting emails go unanswered overnight. He had begun to read more slowly. And he listened, really listened, when a small voice asked him why clouds moved, but buildings didn't, or whether stars could see people back. Isla never brought up the hearing, but Elias could see it in her eyes. The way she looked at him longer before bed. The way her shoulders tensed when the doorbell rang. The way her hands fidgeted when she thought he wasn't watching. And so he found ways to anchor her, even when he could not anchor himself. Every night they read a story. Every morning he let her choose her own clothes, and every afternoon he sat beside her while she mapped things. Rooms, routes, people. She drew without fuss, without explanation, but with a kind of precision he had only seen in architects and soldiers. He never asked her why. He just let her draw. On the 4th morning since the caseworker's visit, Elias stood in the security archive room 3 floors below the penthouse reviewing camera logs with his chief of security. A gray-haired man named Wills, who had worked with Elias since the early days, stood beside him, arms crossed. "That's him," Elias said quietly, pausing the screen. The image was grainy but clear enough. A man with a tired gait, a face that echoed his own, but with softened lines, crouched beside a young girl in a red hoodie. He was handing her something. Candy. A wrapper identical to one Elias had found tucked in the wall near the laundry hall. He used a fake name to sign in. He worked 5 overnight shifts and then just left no resignation, no contact. "No. Badge deactivated," Wills confirmed. "We flagged it as a low-priority abandonment at the time. Happens with temp workers now and then." "Get me every detail you can," Elias said. "Name, address, contacts, whatever he gave us when he applied." "Do you think it's really him?" Elias didn't answer. He only said, "I think she remembers him for a reason." Later that day, back in the penthouse, Elias found Isla sitting in the corner of the living room, on a large circular rug she had claimed as her drawing space. She was barefoot, wearing one of the soft gray sweaters they had picked together the week before. Her notebook was open, and next to it was a new page, a new map. But this one was different. Less architectural, more symbolic. She had drawn her world, not the building, not the elevators, but people. Him. Herself. A small figure labeled Lee standing in front of a dark hallway marked with question marks, and a space in the center with a small bed and a desk and a window, labeled in careful small letters. "Here, Isla," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "This is beautiful. It's a memory map," she explained, "so I don't lose the good parts." He pointed at the small room she had labeled. "Is that the guest room?" "It's not a guest room anymore," she said. "It's mine. You said so." "That's right." She looked up at him. Are they going to try and say I can't stay? He didn't lie. They might. Will you let them? No, he said. I will not. Even if it's hard. Even if it's impossible. She nodded. Okay. That night after she had gone to sleep, Elias sat at the kitchen table with a glass of scotch and the photo of Liam. He had carried it from room to room these past days like an anchor he couldn't drop. He still had no proof, no certainty, but he had her memory, her map, her belief. That had to mean something. The next morning he received a call from his lawyer. They've requested a preliminary statement from you to be submitted ahead of the hearing, she said. It's not binding, but it will give the judge a sense of your intentions. I already wrote one, Elias replied. It's just not in legal language. You can submit both, but the court will require the formal version. I will send them both, Elias said. They need to see the truth. When he hung up, he opened the drawer in his office and took out the page he had written after Miss Clark's visit. He copied it again by hand, changing nothing. Every word still felt right, still felt real. That afternoon, Elias and Isla went for a walk in the small private garden on the rooftop of the hotel's north tower. It was one of the only spaces that was green and quiet at the same time. Isla walked slowly, running her fingers along the tops of hedges, stopping now and then to look at a flower or a patch of moss. She sat on a bench and stared out at the skyline. Do you think Lee remembers me? She asked. I think he does, Elias said. You're not someone who gets forgotten. He gave me a caramel once. It stuck to my tooth. I didn't tell him. Why not? I didn't want him to feel bad. Elias sat beside her. Do you want to see him again? If you're there too, she said. He's nice. But you stayed. That sentence made something swell in Elias's chest, something that hurt and healed at the same time. I will always be here, he said. No matter what. Later that night she drew again. This time she drew 2 chairs on a rooftop, 2 people sitting side by side, a caramel between them. Underneath, in small, neat letters, she wrote, Still here. Elias added the drawing to the folder of papers he would take to the hearing. The next day the rain came back. Not a storm, just a soft gray mist that curled around the windows like a whisper. Elias stood in his office while Isla read on the couch. The doorbell rang again. Another knock, this one louder. He opened the door to find Miss Clark again, this time accompanied by a second woman. She had sharper eyes. A clipboard with more pages. Mr. Quinn, Miss Clark said. This is Miss Hendley. She is with the Oversight Review Panel. We are conducting the pre-hearing home evaluation. Elias nodded. Of course. Come in. Isla watched them with quiet composure. Miss Clark addressed her first. Hello again, Isla. We will be walking through the apartment today. Is that all right? Isla nodded. Would you like to show us your room? Isla stood and led them down the hall without hesitation. She opened the door, pointed to her small bookshelf, the folded clothes in her drawers, the lamp she had chosen herself. When they asked her questions, she answered simply and clearly. Where do you eat at the counter? With Elias. What do you do before bed? Read. Brush my teeth. Check my window once. Why the window? To remember I am high up. Safe. They left her room after several minutes and moved through the rest of the penthouse. When they were done, Miss Hendley turned to Elias. She is extremely self-possessed, she said, almost unnaturally so. She's lived a life that required it. We have concerns about emotional regulation, about attachment models. She is forming one, Elias said. It is slow, but it is happening. Miss Clark glanced at the folder on his desk. Is this the statement? Yes. 2 copies, 1 legal, 1 honest. She took the pages and tucked them into her own folder. We will see you Friday. We'll be there. After they left, Elias stood at the window for a long time. Isla came beside him and placed her hand on the glass. I like it when they leave, she said. Why? Because then it's just us again. Elias turned to her. Is that what you want? She nodded. Just us is good. And he realized then that she was no longer bracing for the fall. She was planting roots, however gently, however quietly. She was choosing to believe, and he would make sure she never had to regret it, no matter what happened on Friday. Friday arrived under a pale sky that looked neither hopeful nor grim, just blank like a canvas waiting for someone else to choose the colors. Elias Quinn stood at the kitchen counter in his penthouse pouring hot water over a single tea bag, his fingers steady, but his thoughts anything but. Isla sat on a stool nearby, her hands folded over the same small notebook she carried everywhere. She had not said much that morning. She had dressed herself in a soft blue sweater and dark gray leggings, then sat quietly while he made breakfast. She had only asked one question. Will they let me speak? Elias had paused before answering. If they ask you something, you can answer. But you don't have to say anything you don't want to. She had nodded and gone back to her toast. Now, as they prepared to leave, Elias handed her the coat they had picked together weeks ago. Do you remember the courtroom? He asked. From when you went with your aunt? She nodded slowly. It was loud. They said I couldn't talk. This one won't be like that, he said. You're not in trouble. No one is angry at you. But they might take me away. They might try, he said honestly, but I will not let them. You know that, right? She met his eyes. I know, because you don't say things unless they're true. The elevator ride to the ground floor was silent. Isla held his hand, her grip small but firm. The car waiting for them was black, nondescript, and parked by the private service entrance. The driver nodded silently as they climbed in. The city moved past them in a blur of early morning gray. Traffic lights blinked without urgency. People walked in coats and scarves, unaware that a hearing today could decide whether a child got to stay in the only real home she had ever known. At the courthouse, their attorney met them outside the security checkpoint. A composed woman in her 50s with gray streaks in her hair and a voice that never wavered. You both look ready, she said, crouching slightly to Isla's level. You remember me? Isla nodded. You brought the paper with the big words. Yes, but today you don't need to know any of the big words. You just need to be yourself. Isla gave a small nod and looked up at Elias. Can we sit together inside? Yes, he said. We'll be side by side the whole time. The hearing room was smaller than Elias expected. No judge's bench towering above them, no jury box. Just a long wooden table, a few chairs, and a woman seated in the center, dressed in plain black robes and reading over a file. The judge looked up as they entered. Mr. Quinn, Miss Monroe. Elias helped Isla into her chair and then took the seat beside her. The caseworker, Miss Clark, was already seated across the table, flanked by a legal aide. Miss Henley stood near the corner with a clipboard. The judge cleared her throat and adjusted her glasses. This is a continuation hearing for the emergency guardianship of one Isla Monroe, currently residing with Elias Quinn under temporary placement. I have read the submitted statements. I will now ask several questions to establish the facts of this case. Her eyes moved to Elias. Mr. Quinn, are you currently the sole legal guardian of Miss Monroe? Not yet, but I am petitioning for full legal guardianship. You understand that this will make you fully responsible for her care, education, medical needs, and emotional development until she is 18. Yes, Elias said. I understand completely. You have no prior parenting experience. No, but I am learning quickly. Why do you want to be this child's guardian? Elias did not look away, because she is already my family, not by blood, but by choice, by presence, by everything we have shared since the night I found her. I do not want to imagine my life without her in it. The judge looked down and made a note. She turned to Isla. Miss Monroe, may I ask you a few questions? Isla nodded, her hands resting on her notebook. Do you feel safe where you are now? Yes, Isla said. Do you like living with Mr. Quinn? I don't like it, she said quietly. I love it. Can you tell me why? Isla looked down at her notebook, opened it, and held up a drawing. It showed a tall building, a small girl in a window, a man standing outside the door. Above it, in careful lettering, were the words, "He stayed." The judge looked at the page for a long time, then looked back at Isla. "Thank you. That's all I needed." Miss Clark spoke next. "We have no doubt about the sincerity of Mr. Quinn's intentions. However, we do have concerns about the child's long-term psychological health and the lack of familial support structure in place." The judge nodded. "Has the child shown signs of emotional instability?" "She is too self-reliant for her age. She shows signs of early trauma. She does not express distress easily." Elias spoke up. "That is true. But she also reads, she draws, she builds memory maps of places she wants to keep. She is healing. And she is doing it in the only place that has ever made her feel seen." "We cannot base legal decisions on sentiment," Miss Clark said. "No," Elias said. "But we should base them on truth." The judge sat back. "I have heard enough." The room fell silent. Isla held her breath. Elias kept her hand in his. The judge turned a final page, then looked directly at them. "This court grants full legal guardianship of Isla Monroe to Elias Quinn, effective immediately, with all associated rights and responsibilities." Isla exhaled audibly. Elias squeezed her hand. The judge continued. "Miss Monroe, you are no longer a ward of the state. You have a legal home, and someone who speaks for you." Isla looked up. "I can speak for myself now." The judge smiled faintly. "Yes, I believe you can." The session ended quietly. No applause, no declarations, just the sound of papers being gathered and chairs scraping the floor. Outside the courtroom, Isla looked up at Elias. "Am I really yours now?" "You always were," he said. "Now the world knows it too." They walked down the courthouse steps together, her small hand still wrapped in his. The sky had cleared slightly. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting soft gold over the pavement. They got into the waiting car, but before the driver pulled away, Isla turned in her seat. "Can we go somewhere? Where someplace with flowers?" Elias nodded. "I know just the place." They drove to the hotel's rooftop garden, the one Isla had visited before. It was quiet and open and still blooming despite the season. They sat on a bench, side by side. Isla picked a small leaf and traced its edges with her finger. "It's real," she whispered. "It doesn't feel real, but it is." Elias nodded. "It's real, and it's ours." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in her life she didn't have to watch the door, because she already knew who would be on the other side. Someone who stayed, someone who fought, someone who chose her, and kept choosing her every single day. Hold on for just a second. If this story touched you, please subscribe. Every subscription helps keep our stories alive. Let's continue. The days that followed the court's decision unfolded gently like the first pages of a new book written in softer ink. There were no announcements, no calls from reporters, no dramatic shifts in routine, just the quiet, steady reality that Isla Monroe was no longer waiting to be taken away. She belonged now, not to a system, not to a room borrowed in the night, but to a home, to a man who had once lived in perfect solitude and now found peace only when a small voice hummed in the next room. Elias Quinn watched her in new ways, not out of fear, but out of awe. The way she left her books scattered, now unafraid they would be removed. The way she ran slightly in the hallway when she thought no one was looking. The way she slept with her bedroom door slightly open. She did not check the locks anymore. One afternoon, a few days after the hearing, Elias sat in his office reviewing property proposals when Isla entered with her notebook under her arm. She paused in the doorway, waiting. He set the folder down and motioned for her to come in. She walked across the room and handed him a new drawing. It was a map again, but this time there were no exits or warning symbols. It was a layout of the penthouse, each room labeled with tiny names. But what caught him was the change in language. Guest room was now labeled Isla's room. The main hall said walking place. The dining area said pancake mornings. And his office, his sacred silent domain, was labeled talking space. "You renamed everything," he said, smiling, "because it all means something different now." "What about the kitchen? It says tea time." He laughed quietly. "Fair enough. "Can I ask you something?" she said, sitting on the chair across from his desk. "Anything. Do you think he knows who Lee? Do you think he knows I'm okay now?" Elias leaned back slowly. "I hope he does. Can we find him?" He hesitated. "We're trying. We know a little more now. Where he worked, what name he used. But it's not enough." "Not yet." "Will you keep trying?" "Yes," he said. "For you. And for me." That night after Isla was asleep, Elias opened the folder marked Liam Carr. His team had pulled together everything they could from the brief employment. The temp agency had no forwarding address. The emergency contact field had been left blank. There were surveillance photos, time-stamped logs, a few signatures. One stood out. It was a sign-in sheet for a supply room on the 22nd floor. Time stamped just 1 week before Isla had been found. The signature was unmistakably Liam's, slanted, rushed with the curl on the cue and car he had used even as a child. On impulse, Elias returned to that floor. It was nearly midnight. The corridor was dim silent except for the hum of recessed lights. He unlocked the door to the old supply room. Inside it smelled faintly of old paint, and something else. Something Elias recognized as the cheap peppermint gum Liam used to chew when he was nervous. He looked around and spotted a small mark on the back of the closet door, scratched lightly into the wood with something sharp. Not initials, just one word. Still. Elias stood frozen, the meaning sinking in slow and deep. It was not a message of distance. It was not a farewell. It was a promise, a declaration. Liam had been here, and maybe he still was. The next morning, Elias didn't mention the visit to Isla. Instead, he took her to a small bookstore near the park, where she chose a new journal and a pack of colored pencils. On the walk home, she said, "Do you think we can draw a memory before it happens?" "What do you mean?" "Like if I draw something I want to remember later, can I make it come true?" "Maybe," he said, "if you believe in it enough." "I want to draw him." "Lee." She nodded, "But this time with you in the picture, too." That evening, Elias brought out a box from his office. Inside were old photos, most of which Isla had never seen. Pictures from his childhood, his early business years, the ribbon-cutting ceremonies and award galas that lined his past like framed steps in a long hallway. He let her look through them freely. She paused at one. It showed 2 boys barely 8 and 10 standing in front of a chain-link fence. One had a scraped knee. The other was smiling crookedly. "This one," she whispered. "This is him." "Yes," Elias said. "That's Liam." She studied the photo with reverence, as if memorizing the lines of his face. "He looks like you, but messier." Elias laughed. "He always was. Did you miss him every day?" Elias nodded, even when I pretended not to. "Do you think he missed you?" "I think he did. He just didn't know how to come back." Isla pressed the photo to her chest. "Maybe we can help him." The next morning, a letter arrived in a plain envelope. No return address, no postage. It had been slipped under the penthouse door sometime before sunrise. Elias found it before Isla woke up. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, no signature, just a message. "I saw her once. She was quiet. She looked like someone who needed to be remembered. You did that. I'm not far, but I'm not ready yet. Tell her the man with the quiet eyes never forgot." Elias sat down slowly, heart pounding. The handwriting was Liam's. There was no doubt. Isla walked in moments later, rubbing her eyes. "You're up early," she said. "So are you. Had a dream. Good or bad?" "Kind of both, but mostly good." He held out the note. "Someone left this." She took it gently, read it slowly. When she reached the last line, she looked up. "He saw me." Elias nodded. "He's not ready to be found. But he's watching. Like a shadow. Like a lighthouse," Elias said. "Still shining. Even from far away." She folded the note and placed it in her notebook between the pages of her new drawing. "Then we wait," she said. "We wait and believe." And as the morning light filled the room, Elias realized that some stories do not end with reunions or declarations. Some end with open doors and steady hearts. Some end with a child drawing a man she never forgot, and a brother somewhere in the city still watching, still waiting, still there. The seasons began to turn. The sharp edges of winter softened, and small signs of spring whispered their way into the city. On the rooftop garden where Isla and Elias often sat, the first buds of early tulips emerged from the cold soil, reaching for sunlight, with the same fragile determination Isla had once shown beneath fluorescent lights and silent corridors. It had been nearly 6 weeks since the letter arrived. Elias kept it in a drawer by his desk, where he sometimes opened it late at night, not to reread the words, but to feel the weight of them. Proof. Connection. Something living that once felt lost. Isla never asked again where Liam was or when he might come. She simply carried on with the quiet faith that he would show up when he could, and until then, she had what she needed. Her days had settled into gentle rhythm, mornings with tea and oatmeal, afternoons reading beside Elias while he worked, evenings drawing memories that had not yet happened. One morning she came into the office, holding a new page, and said, "This one is the 3 of us." I drew it from the future. She handed it to Elias. The picture was simple, just 3 figures on a bench, all looking the same direction. No one's face was turned toward the viewer. Instead, they were watching something far off. It felt quiet, real, a scene that could happen any day now. Elias hung it on the wall beside his framed degrees and corporate recognitions. The paper looked small beside the plaques, but it meant more than any of them. Then one evening, as Elias returned from a meeting at one of his properties, he noticed something strange. The doorman handed him a small brown envelope. "Found this outside, sir, propped against the wall. No name, no address." Inside was a tiny photograph. It had been folded twice, edges worn. A snapshot taken from behind showing Elias sitting on a bench in the rooftop garden. Beside him, Isla. She was pointing at something in the sky. He recognized the day. It had been 2 weeks ago, a moment he thought had belonged only to them. The note on the back of the photograph said 3 words in familiar handwriting. "You looked happy." Elias stood there holding the photo heart heavy and light at the same time. Liam had been close enough to see, to capture the moment, to send it back like a signal fire. That night, after Isla had gone to bed, Elias stood in the rooftop garden alone. The city glowed beneath him. He held the photograph in his hands. "If you are out there," he said aloud, "come see her. She's ready. We both are." He did not know if anyone heard, but he left the photograph on the bench. The next day, it was gone. 2 mornings later, Isla sat at the breakfast table staring at her tea. She had not spoken much since waking. Elias studied her from the stove. "Something on your mind?" he asked. She nodded. "I think today is the day." The day for what? For everything to start again. He did not ask what she meant. She had these moments sometimes, of knowing things he could not explain. He handed her a plate of toast. "Let's be ready then." That afternoon, while Isla read in the sunroom, the intercom buzzed. Elias walked to the door and pressed the button. "Yes?" The voice was low, quiet. "I'm not here to stay. I just want to see her." Elias froze. Then he whispered, "Liam." Silence. Then yes. He pressed the unlock button and went to find Isla. She looked up immediately. "He is here, isn't he?" Elias nodded. Her eyes were steady. "Do I look okay?" He smiled. "You look exactly right." When Liam stepped off the elevator, he looked nothing like the boy in the photographs, and yet everything like the man Elias had known in the shadows. He was thinner lines creased around his eyes, hair touched with gray. But he walked with purpose, like someone who had been holding breath for a very long time. They stood across from each other in the foyer, neither speaking. Then Elias stepped forward and pulled him into a quiet embrace. "You came." Liam nodded against his shoulder. "I didn't know how not to." Isla appeared in the hallway, silent. Liam turned slowly. She looked up at him with the calm of someone who had waited, not with urgency but with belief. He crouched down, hands in his coat pockets. You drew me, didn't you? She nodded. And I kept drawing you until you looked like this. He smiled, eyes red. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. She stepped closer. You came when you could. That's how stories work. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded letter. This is yours. I kept it safe. Liam held the paper gently. I meant every word. I know. She took his hand and led him toward the living room. Want to see my books? I have one about animals that make their own homes. Liam smiled. I would love that. Later, after Isla had shown him her room and her memory maps and the plants she was trying to grow in old teacups, Elias poured 2 cups of tea and brought them to the rooftop. Liam joined him standing by the railing. So Elias said, How long were you watching long enough to know you didn't need me in the way I once thought you did? Long enough to see that you became the man I hoped you would. And Isla Liam looked toward the sky. She saved me, without knowing, just being her. She gave me something to believe in again. Why did you stay away? Because I thought I had to suffer first. I thought I needed to disappear to make up for the things I ran from. But I was wrong. I see that now. Elias sipped his tea. You can stay, if you want to. Liam looked over. For how long? As long as it takes. Maybe forever. Liam smiled. That sounds like something worth staying for. They sat in silence for a long while, as the wind softened and the tulips below began to open wider, as the city lights blinked on one by one, as a little girl below traced her name over and over in colored pencil, in a home that had once been a fortress of silence, now rewritten by laughter, by memory, by choice. And so in the end, the story was not about a man who found a child, nor a girl who cleaned an office floor to be noticed, nor even a brother who returned from the edges of regret. It was about what happened when all of them stood still long enough to be found. By each other, by hope, by the chance to begin again. Thank you for walking this journey with us. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. And if you believe in stories where love is chosen, where healing happens quietly, and where family is something you build from the pieces you still carry, subscribe to our channel and tap the bell. Your next emotional journey is only 1 click away. Tap the video on your screen now. We promise it is one you will not forget. Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.